Good evening and welcome. If someone you knew was sent to prison, how would your perception of that person change? Would you be willing to accept them back into your community? Tonight on the program, we'll take a closer look at the Yellow Ribbon Program, an initiative by the Fiji Corrections Service aiming to end the stigma associated with former inmates once they are released. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We have with us the Fiji Corrections Service Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Api Meleki Toke, and the senior psychologist at the Fiji Corrections Service, Ms. Elenani Furu. So talk to us about some of the history behind the Yellow Ribbon Program and how it came about in Fiji.
Thank you, Zad. Good evening to the viewers as well. The Yellow Ribbon Program was a concept which had been borrowed from Singapore in 2008. The main idea behind the Yellow Ribbon Program is for the community, the public, to give a second chance to those that have been that have gone off track and have been convicted by the courts and sent to prison. And it is therefore important for members of the public and members of the community to accept them for the wrongs that they have done. Everybody has done wrong, even though only a few are caught by the law and convicted. So it is important that we understand the importance of forgiveness and acceptance, and take action to ensure that those that have done wrong are encouraged to change.
The idea of forgiveness and acceptance, I'm guessing it's a central, it's very important to the program itself. So, Ms. Vuru, from a psychologist's perspective, why do you think this is necessary?
I think it is very, very important, because when we look at the objective of the Yellow Ribbon, we have 3 A's. First A is creating awareness, which is very important for everybody to have the insight, to have the knowledge, and secondly, the acceptance part. I think when we reflect to the whole component of Yellow Ribbon Program, acceptance is not that easy. And when we look at the 3rd A, the 3rd objective, which is action part, Fiji Corrections can't do it alone. That's why we have the Yellow Ribbon Program initiated back then and has been done in Suva previously. So for now, we have shifted to the Western Division with the focus of creating awareness for involvement, for engagement and partnership with the Lotu, the Vanua. We're looking at government ministries, the NGOs, the non-government organizations, the civil societies, the other government statutory bodies, that they need to come on board and to work with us.
Earlier on in the year, we had brought the Commissioner himself, Francis Keane, to talk about the Yellow Ribbon Project a little bit, and he had spoken about the successes, but there's also obstacles that come along the way. Of course, we're going to discuss them at length, but we'd like to know, on the ground so far, you have been reaching out to the communities and trying to gauge what their perception of the Yellow Ribbon Project has been like in the past few years. Talk to us about that.
Okay. When we incarcerate an inmate or offender, the Fiji Corrections Service is the first prison. Then the community at large is the second prison. It's not that easy for us to try and change, nurture, rehabilitate somebody. Then the other side of it, in which they need to return to community, we try our best. What can be done differently? Stigma is real. And the key to the second prison, which is the community, the citizens, they have them. Fiji Corrections Service has been a centric organization. We have a vision, we have a mission, and we have our values and mottos. The vision is to rehabilitate all inmates, that they become law-abiding citizens who contribute positively to our country, Fiji. And we look at the mission that we have to positively restore lives, irrespective whatever crime, whatever offense that they have committed. We try our best looking at rehabilitation as a whole And we focus on the motto that we have always, rehabilitation. That's the Latin word, semper restituens. And the values, we have 6 values. One is the family. Another one is integrity. Then we have leadership and loyalty. Then honesty comes in, and empathy. I think I would say that's the driving principles to the CAN services that we provide at the Fiji Correction Service.
I think that's a good way to, I guess, start off the program by discussing one of the statements that you said, the community as a second prison. And this question to Mr. Toke, do you think that inmates are likely to reoffend if the community that they go back into becomes a second prison for them? You think that those people are likely to reoffend? And what are some of the ways that this stigma affects them?
Thank you, Ziad. It is important for us to understand that once the inmate has been incarcerated, he's been, one day he will return to the community. It is therefore important that when he returns to the community, he doesn't return to zero. Which is why Fiji Correction Service is trying to create awareness and encourage members of the public, particularly the family, the Vanua, the churches, to come on board and assist. This is the only way we can avoid a recurrence of offending behavior that the inmate comes in with. And it's important that we understand, as I had, it's important for us to understand that these inmates, once they are incarcerated, they don't actually remain in prison. One day they'll be out. And what is there out there that they can come back to? Do we have anything that we can use to assist them?
I think it is very important for us to create second chances to these people. And also to, as I mentioned earlier on, the second objective for Yellow Ribbon, which is creating an environment of acceptance, which is very, very important. The home environment, the Vanua, the Lotu, the employment providers, has been earlier alluded by our Deputy Commissioner that they return without anything. They return with zero. So the probability for them to return would be very high if they are not given a second chance. And also that the community at large has a very important part to play in order to break the cycle of crime and recommitting crime or reoffending.
Stay with us. We'll come back right after a short break.
Welcome back. Now, Mr. Tauke, Ms. Vuru has said that there are 3 A's to the Yellow Ribbon Project. It's awareness, acceptance, and action. There's other philosophies that are ingrained in that as well. But let's just look at the first A, awareness. One of the setbacks that sometimes the Yellow Ribbon Project does face is that people are not able to accept inmates back into society because they're not aware of the fact that they have been rehabilitated. They've gone through those processes where they are made aware of the circumstances that led them to be incarcerated, and now they are making positive changes. Talk to us about that.
Thank you. For the Fiji Correction Service, awareness is one of the key aspects of our work. We've tried to promote the Yellow Ribbon campaign through our awareness programs that we normally conduct throughout the country. And one of the main reasons behind these awareness programs, as we've already alluded to, the 3 A's includes awareness, acceptance, and action. The first part is awareness. We need to ensure that the members of the public are aware of what we are doing within prison. Unless they know what's happening, they wouldn't be able to understand how to react to inmates that come out. So we normally conduct awareness to encourage the public to also do their part. They also have a part to play in this. The inmates will come back to a family. They don't just go anywhere. They'll come back to a village or a community. It's important for them to understand how to react once an inmate returns into the community.
This is where you come in and in a very key position, Mrs. Vuru. The Deputy Commissioner had mentioned that the FCS is doing its work and the public must be made aware of it. When he says that they're doing their work, this is where you and your team come in to counsel them, the inmates that are incarcerated, talk to them and make changes. It's not as though they're under lock and key and then they just let back into society.
Like I mentioned earlier on, the Fiji Correction Service is a rehabilitation-centric organization. The role that we perform as psychologists and counselors is very important. We work together with officers to make changes in the lives of those incarcerated or under our care. We try to look beyond their behavior. And one of our core functions in there is to conduct needs assessment. In the receiving centers, that is very important. Any inmate who is been incarcerated, it's a must that we conduct risk assessments with the belief that identifying needs, if they are not met, there is a risk imposed by inmates. So we are trying our best from the findings that we gather from our assessment. Then we identify the treatments for inmates in terms of programs to treat their offending behaviors. And from the treatment that we have, we put together treatment plans for individual inmates. Then from the treatment plans, we try to identify, okay, the sentence plan. During the duration of the period or the period within their incarceration into the organization, we have to identify the sentence planning for each individual, whether it's long-termers or short-termers, depending on the period that they are incarcerated. So that is important for us to identify. We provide programs as well for them to treat the offending behavior. And not only that, we look at what are the means and terms that we can improve into what we are doing actually, the best practices. Not only through research, we have been given the opportunity to go abroad and to see best practices from other countries to make a difference into the lives of those incarcerated in terms of programs, in terms of therapies and interventions to change, to nurture, making a difference in the lives of those incarcerated, looking beyond the behavior and look at the person within.
And I mean, this is why the first aspect, awareness, comes into play, right? Because it's important for everyday people, everyday Fijians to know that once a person is incarcerated, it's not just them being locked up and not doing anything. The Fiji Correction Service, there's a lot that goes on within that period. And we'd like to get into a bit more of that. So could you give us an example, without revealing too much? I understand that some of these issues can be sensitive in nature, depending on the particular person or the subject of the conversation. So could you give us an example of what a particular, for example, if someone is incarcerated for a sentence of 6 years, what sort of a plan would the Yellow Ribbon Program put together? And in what way would you aim to change that inmate?
The treatment plan, okay, that we gather from the individual inmates is totally different from the others. They could commit the same crime, but the treatment is totally different. We usually look at the background because we are different.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all?
No, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So for that particular inmate, the first thing that we try to look into their background. As I mentioned earlier on, we do assessment, in-depth assessment. Certain skills we need to have, mental health skills, and also on counseling skills. Very important for us to fully understand the person sitting in front of us in terms of information gathering. Then education level comes in as well. Then we identify the types of programs that they need to go through. It's not really only about us giving the programs. We work together with the family, their loved ones. So the early stages of the process that we give, we work together with the family. We actually conduct home visits. the geographical location of the individual inmates. We need to see where they stay. More information need to be gathered from the family members, not only from the inmates. To complete the information, we need to gather the family, the sources of information to get from them. And we usually identify and conduct a meeting which is known as the Institution Sentence Planning Board meeting. We sit together, the families, the mentors, community mentors, and the OC, the officers in charge, the rehab team. We have a multidisciplinary team that we have in place within the organization, the Fiji Correction Service. The doctors are involved, the nurses are involved, to look at what can be done differently. What else can we see together to make a difference in the sentence planning of the inmate from in-care to aftercare?
Mr. Toke, just quickly before we go to our next break, in your experience as Deputy Commissioner, do you get to see a change in inmate from, let's say, for example, when the program begins to by the time that they're supposed to be released? Have you seen significant changes within any particular inmate? Any examples that you can?
Well, we have seen significant changes in the lives of most of those under our care. This basically comes about through collective efforts by the Fiji Correction Service, the family, the churches, and the community as a whole. As we've mentioned earlier, our mission is to rehabilitate all offenders, and that is important for us.
When we come back in our next segment, we'll discuss this year's Yellow Ribbon Walk. Stay with us. So the annual Yellow Ribbon Walk, it's a yearly event. This year, you mentioned earlier that it's the first time that it's being moved to the West. Talk to us about this Yellow Ribbon Walk in the West this year.
Thank you. It's important that we not only confine our programs to one area. We need to take into consideration the need in other divisions. So that is why we have decided to move our Yellow Ribbon Walk this year to the Western Division, particularly because of the need to create awareness amongst the community in the West, the family, the churches, and also corporate bodies, those that we are trying to bring on board to assist us in the rehabilitation of offenders. As we had mentioned earlier, we are conducting our civic pride programs in the last 2 weeks around the country. And that is a build-up towards our Yellow Ribbon Walk, which will be conducted on the 12th of October. It's important for us to ensure that the public are made aware of the reasons behind why we are conducting such programs, and the importance of their duty in trying to assist us to be able to effectively rehabilitate the lives of those that we look after.
So one major point is, of course, acceptance. They do need to accept that, yes, inmates have been rehabilitated. They are ready to get themselves reintegrated into society, which is where your stakeholders come in. You mentioned, sir, that you're trying to get them back into the workforce so that they're more self-reliant, self-sufficient. You do have programs within the Yellow Ribbon Project while they are still incarcerated to get them to build on their life skills so that when they go out, they can find jobs for themselves. Talk to us about that.
We have early release schemes as part of our rehabilitation program, and we focus on 4 areas of early release in terms of the employment, in terms of job placement, and early release on community work, and early release on education. In the period of confinement, there is a criteria that they have to meet. they have to have 12 months left for their sentence to be discharged. They do not breach at any time or for the past 6 months. Also, they need to complete their rehabilitation programs that need to treat their offending behavior, and well supported by their families. And they need to have offer letters from employment providers for acceptance, either from the employment providers or from education for their education release. Those are few criteria that need to be in place so that we can see and release whoever have applied to be given the opportunity for that scheme.
Well, so as not to blight or to discourage any potential employers out there, could you probably tell us maybe some specific areas of trade that you have spoken to employers trying to get inmates rehabilitated by getting them to work with the companies? Or the areas, rather. You do not have to name the companies because we understand the need for privacy in those matters.
Well, I think if we look around it within the Fiji Correction Service, we have a wealth of people who are incarcerated with skill sets. And we try to reactivate. There's a program that we have on upskilling vocational training. And we try to reactivate their known skills, or we teach them new ones. And we thank the employers that they have come on board to assist us. For example, like the
agriculture division.
Yes, some of them have been coming aboard previously to assist us even with the teaching of skills to the inmates. And also with, when we look at, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Marissa Msweni for allowing our inmates at the bakeries sector in Suva and in Nosuri for giving them the opportunity of second chance for employment. And not only that, we look at other construction companies that already we have been recruiting our inmates. And apart from that, I would like to thank Montfort Boys Town for extending their opening opportunities for our inmates who have been giving another second chance for educational release as well in terms of vocational training. And the tourist sector, yes, they have been coming on board giving second chance of employment opportunities for our inmates. And we also look at, I would say, many other employers that they have come on board.
Sure. You also have business units in Nambora?
Yes, we do have SBUs, commercial enterprise units that also have been used to train these inmates. While we employ them, we also encourage them to learn new practices that we would like them to adopt, so that once they are released, they will be able to go out. As my colleague had mentioned, employment is not only in the employment sector. There are unskilled workers as well. So we can train them to be good farmers. And that is one of the areas that we are encouraging inmates, and they are being trained in our commercial units.
You're also allowing and encouraging inmates as part of their rehabilitation process to express themselves creatively. You've got the Tangimautia Gallery. So that's another side, something to look forward to, a holistic approach to that. Can you talk to us about how do you go about talking to potential employers or even to members of the community, those of faith-based organizations, to help them come on board with some of the initiatives of the Yellow Ribbon Project?
What we have been doing, we have been engaging with the employment providers. I think giving second chance is one of the areas that we actually try to implement through the Yellow Ribbon initiative to create acceptance, especially with the employment providers, giving them second chances. As earlier alluded, because they have to start with zero once they are discharged. What we have been doing, we have been going to business houses they have been going to employers seeking their support. And last year we have launched a employment symposium in which we have identified and invited employers to come on board and showcase the skill sets that our inmates have. We provide them with their CVs, and for this year we have also included their certificates, trade certificates. And coming up in the month of November, the 15th, we're having our employment symposium, which will be conducted as well in the Western Division.
We'll have more for you right after the break. So in this segment, we'd like to discuss some of the things that the Fiji Corrections Service does for former inmates once they're released. We spoke about rehabilitation, especially the kind of rehabilitation that happens while they're incarcerated. And we'd like to talk about some of the ways that the FCS helps these inmates have proper support systems once they are out of prison to ensure that they are integrated back into the community well enough. Mr. Toke, how does that happen? What does the FCS do?
Thank you, Ziad. The FCS has programs in place to assist in trying to rehabilitate the inmates. The programs vary from in-care and aftercare as well, which we normally refer to as through care. Now, we have a couple of programs that we normally undertake inside prison. One of them is called Solosolovaiki program, which is similar to a traditional Fijian cultural work that we normally do in our community. So the Solosolovaiki program involves the Fiji Corrections Service identifying inmates that have land and that can be developed. And through consultation, we finally take inmates out while they're still serving to their land, cultivate their land, plant whatever we can plant according to what they prefer to be planted, and continue to look after the land until they're released. Normally it's done 2 years before an inmate is released. And some of the inmates have been very successful in that. While they're still serving, they are already harvesting the fruits of their labor in their farms and selling them. The money is saved and kept in an account which is normally withdrawn once they are released. That's one of the programs. And there's also the program called the PEP assistance, which is an assistance given by government, poverty alleviation grant, which is normally given to inmates who are successful in after careful assessment. We have 100,000 grant from government that's normally shared amongst the inmates, and whatever inmate is successful with his application is given a small sum of money to start off with whatever type of business that he prefers to run. So we've had a couple of inmates that have been granted this fund, and most of them have been very successful.
You know, we've been reading in the press some of the success stories of certain inmates. But from what you have told me, care within and after they've served their sentence, I'm guessing there's a lot of work that has to be done by the inmate themselves. I mean, the desire for change has to be driven from within. And, you know, Dr. Vuru, Mrs. Vuru, how important is it for an inmate to have good mental health so that they can, you know, find that motivation to do something else from within?
Okay. Thank you, Ziad, for the question. The change has to come from the inmates, like you mentioned earlier on. We need to identify the readiness within the individual so that we can know that this person is ready to change and to move on in life. And we identify the skills that they have, and we place them in certain areas, like earlier alluded by our Deputy Commissioner. We have our small business units, and we place them accordingly. Apart from that, there are other areas of work that we do, allow them to attend and to do in order for them to be successful in life. Not only from the individual, we need to bring on board their relatives and their family and their loved ones. For us to see the support from the families there before we venture out to identify what else, what type of resources that they have, whether we can engage with other stakeholders to support the individuals so that they can be successful into the community.
Can you talk to us about how important it is for the inmates' well-being and also having to balance that out with the community's well-being? Of course, with the Yellow Ribbon Project, it's all about giving a second chance, but you cannot stamp out one for the other, having to maintain the status quo and understanding that human beings themselves are very complex creatures. How do you walk that fine line?
To look after the well-being of inmates, a saying that we usually mention and within the Fiji Correction Service, that we cannot give what we don't have. It's a very noble calling. The work is very challenging. It's not that easy. And the product that we have been mandated by the government is to look after human beings. Looking beyond the behavior is very challenging. It's not that easy. But the care that we provide needs to be very holistic. We look after their health, we look after their psychological and mental emotions, and we look after their spiritual as well, irrespective of whatever religion we respect. And we try to look into the needs of inmates. So assessment is not only done from the beginning. Every day and intervals, periodic is very important. And their needs is very important, so that during the period of the incarceration, their needs need to be met. So we are not only working in isolation. We work in partnership with the families, with the Lotu, the Vanua, and the community at large, so that the inmate's well-being, not only during the period of incarceration, within and after as well, needs to be optimum, so that they can be successful in the community.
Mr. Tauke, does the FCS have any programs or any initiatives in place where inmates who have been released into the community, they and their family or their support system are also given a safe space, so to speak, to just check in on whether or not they are okay? Because just releasing someone, having someone accept them, the follow-up to that, as I would say, maybe just to check in to say, are you okay? Is everything all right? Do you have any problems, any issues? Can we assist you in that? Does the FCS follow through with that?
Thank you. The FCS, as I had alluded to earlier, the Through Care program does not only confine our programs to within the institutions. The Through Care program also considers the aftercare of inmates. Once they are released, we continue to monitor their progress out in the community. We normally pay visits to their families, just to say hello, and whether everything is okay, or whether they need further assistance, and if possible, we could assist them further. So that is already in place, and we are always also thankful to a lot of their families that have been very accommodating, accepting members of our staff that normally come around to visit them and conduct regular monitoring checks, just to ensure that they are okay, they don't go off track again, and we continue to work together with their families and the community at large.
Okay. When we come back with our final segment, we'll talk about how you, as a member of the community, can help in the Yellow Ribbon program. Stay with us. So, just from where we left off in the last segment, as a psychologist, Ms. Vuru, what do you think that a person at home needs to do if, for example, if they know someone that's been incarcerated, a distant relative or a friend perhaps? What can that person do to assist the Yellow Ribbon program and, in their own way, I guess, help to change the stigma that's associated with being incarcerated?
I think, like earlier alluded about stigma, okay? That's why Yellow Ribbon program is very important for us to create an environment of acceptance in the lives of inmates, not only the inmates, then we have to look at the family as well. Once any of the inmates been incarcerated, it's not only them that has been stigmatized. Sometimes we look at the loved ones, sometimes we look at the families as a whole. For someone to support Yellow Ribbon, very, very important for them to understand where awareness comes in. Acceptance is not easy. It takes a whole courage of a person. Looking at us as human beings, looking at the inmates as human beings, why not to give second chance? Fiji is a small country. We are related one way or the other to the other person. And when we look at the inmates incarcerated, for surely you could be related to somebody inside. Giving them second chance is just the opportunity. As we mentioned earlier on, empathy is one of our values. Why not give them the opportunity of a second chance to accept them and to support them back into the community to be successful and positively contribute to the country of Fiji.
Mr. Tauke, this is where the FCS comes right at the forefront. Your officers do a very commendable job in assisting the inmates to become, shall we say, familiarized at the first point of contact during the rehabilitation process. Talk to us about the community itself, though, stepping up, and as you say, actions speak louder than words. With the Yellow Ribbon walk that you're having in the West this year, talk to us about how important it is for the officers and also for the inmates to understand and see the presence of the community behind them with the walk.
Thank you. The Fiji Correction Service, in deciding to have the annual Yellow Ribbon Walk move to the West, is because of the need to create awareness to members, family members, and members of the community in the West. You know, that's a saying that's out of sight and out of mind. You know, we believe that taking this program to the West would be a way of trying to create more awareness amongst family members of inmates who are from the Western Division. Not only that, but also employment providers in the Western Division that can assist in accepting some of our skillful inmates that are released. And also the churches and members of the Vanua to understand the importance of the role that we play in the security of our nation. It's important for them to understand as well that they have a role to play. We cannot perform this role alone. We need the assistance, we need the support of the family, the Vanua, and the employment providers.
Well, let's look at the details of the walk itself. It's happening on the 12th of October and it's happening at Churchill Park in Lautoka. Can you tell us about maybe some incentives that you'd have for members of the public to be a part of this event?
The program will begin at 5 o'clock in the morning for registration. We have already made arrangements for transportation to be provided to members of the public from the Nandi area, Ba and Tabua. There will be free transportation provided And we've already made arrangements for buses to pick up those who are interested in joining us from all those areas to come forward and assist us in the work that we will be conducting on that day. The work itself will be done in Lautoka, beginning from Churchill Park and ending at Churchill Park, about a 4 to 5 kilometer walk. We are inviting members of the public from the Western Division who are listening into this program to come forward and join hands with us in trying to show their support to their relatives, their friends who may be incarcerated in prison at the moment, just to show that they are willing to understand and are willing to accept them back through their support.
Well then, Mrs. Vuru, Mr. Toke, thank you very much for joining us on the show this evening.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Thanks for joining us tonight on the show. We'll see you next week. Have a great evening.